こんにちは。まず、僕からの、最初の質問なんですけど、これ、簡単な質問からしますけど、3作目をお撮りになるつもりはあるのかなってことをちょっと考えてまして、というのも、今回パート2で、いろいろ後で伺いたいことあるんですけれども、悪のカウンシルが、全滅してしまったわけですよね。で、全滅してしまったということは、なんだろう、シートの座が今不在になっているということなんですけども、これは、こういう状況になることっていうのは、ルベール氏ですね、要は悪魔ですけども、は想定してたのかどうかということと、こうなってしまった場合、彼はどういう次の一手を打てばいいのかっていうのは僕ちょっと分かんなくなってしまったので、3作目があるんだとしたら、その辺を伺いたいです。
We would love to know as well. I think the
うん。
simple answer is we will keep coming back as long as they will have us. I
そうです。
think when we finished the first movie, we had no design to make a sequel.
うん。
That movie was created as a one-off, and I think in some ways very similar to the second movie. Like everybody but Grace dies at the end of the first movie, so the same question that existed, I think, exists for you now, existed for us then. Like, well, what could possibly happen next? And I think for us, that's actually a really exciting challenge. It's not,
うん。
that the idea that we've told a movie that has a very definitive end means that if you're going to design something new, it's got to be something really unexpected. And that for us is what was so exciting about the sequel is it felt like there was we'd sort of cleaned the slate and the canvas was, something that was just free for us to kind of paint whatever we wanted on, knowing that we wanted Grace to still be front and center in that story.
う
Um,
ん。
so the idea of expanding the mythology made a ton of sense. And to your point about it being unexpected for the devil or unexpected for LaBelle, we love the idea that character doesn't lose, right? That he just
うん。
loves chaos. He doesn't want the families to win. He doesn't want Grace to win. He's just interested in the chaos that he's caused. That's
うん。
what's fun to him. And so Grace surviving, maybe that's actually a good thing. Maybe there's actually opportunity in it for that character. And I think for us now, having expanded the mythology to the point where it's at, we think that's a really interesting question to ask. What's next? How would a new council form, and what might that look like? Is a really fun just jumping off point.
で、それでちょっと追加してもう一つ。で、一作目撮った時に、二作目のこと考えてなかったっていうお話だったんですけども、一作目の演伝から二作目の、スタートは、シームレスにつながるようになっていて、で、あれは多分、デジタルでやったのかなと思うんですけども、ちょっと具体的に、要は、グレースのアップからですね、救急車に行くまでのカットっていうのは、一作目からつながっているところですけども、そこは結構チャレンジングというか、難しかったんじゃないかと想像するんですけども、どうやって処理されたのかちょっと伺いたいです。
It was. We used footage from the original movie
うん。
all the way up for the first minute. So it's literally just replaying the first movie. And then we shot on a Sunday in about an hour. We shot new footage, put
うん。
Grace on the stairs in
Against a blue screen.
against the blue screen with real stairs and a
うん。
mat on the floor to match the floor there. And then she had a what's it called, a doggy cam?
Yeah.
Like a doggy cam attached, and then we just picked it up from there and used good old fashioned VFX, artists. We probably did like 1,000 rounds with them to blend the two images.
うん。
And for a while, we had somebody walking in front to kind of help us with a wipe to hide it a little bit, but it got so good that we asked, what happens if nobody walks in front? Can we just do it seamlessly?
うん。
And we loved the result. And for us, it was how do we start this movie in a really, really confident way where we're just with Grace for almost 4 minutes with a great song going through that full emotional journey. And our intention was how do you hold the audience's hand and walk them from the previous movie into this new world with Grace? And for us, that was just the best way to do it. And the fact that Samara has somehow not aged in the past 7, 8 years was
うん。
really the thing that made it work.
グレースのジャーニーっていうことで言うと、すごく前作、今作で とっても印象的だったのは、彼女の衣装の色が白から赤で黒に変わっていくじゃないですか。もちろん白っていうあのウェディングドレスっていうのは、その彼女のなんていうか、イノセンスだったり、を表すと思うんですけど、そこからこう血に染まって真っ赤になって、最終的には今回すごくかっこいい真っ黒な衣装に身を包みますよね。で、これでもう彼女の、ドラマはある種完結しちゃったんじゃないか。さっきの、第3部の質問と重なると思うんですけど、こういう形で彼女が成長していくっていうのは、お二人にとって、これ、なんていうかな、予期してたことでしょうか、それとも、ある種、彼女が勝手にこう育っていったみたいなところはあるんでしょうか。
It definitely was something we had planned. We knew going into this second movie that we really wanted it to be the second part of one story, and the opening shot is the stitch, where we blend from one to the next. We really loved thinking about that as the midpoint. That moment is the midpoint of Grace's journey, and we really thought of the second movie as an inverse of the first movie in so many ways, right? That first movie is about a character and a relationship that's full of promise and innocence, and everything is taken from her, and things go really, really poorly. And the second movie is about a character that's starting from a place of real loneliness and isolation. And her journey in the second film is basically a love story where she has to learn to reconnect with and fall in love with her sister again, with her real family, her biological family. And the idea that, the sort of we were playing with this notion very early, and I remember Guy and Ryan pitching to us that if the first movie was about Grace fighting for her life, the second movie is about Grace fighting for her soul. And the ending, the idea that she always ends up, in a different sort of version of a wedding at the end of the second movie, and that she's essentially given away her soul to save her life and her sister's life. We really loved that as a bookend to the story. And then, of course, finding a way for her to take advantage of that situation, and again, the sort of rules of the game, and come out on the other side a survivor. We just thought it felt like a very complete thought. And then, of course, Avery, our costume designer, finding a way to tell that story with those very specific stages of the dress. It was very much by design, but I think you always have, a big sort of concept like that. And then when you see it work, you get everybody involved, the performances, all the characterization, the costumes, the set design. We're so excited that it turned out the way that it turned out.
これ映画でその悪の、支配者というか、主席というんですかね、の役で、デビッド・クローネンバーグが最初出演してますよね。で、クローネンバーグが世界を支配していると言われると、割と納得がいくというか、自分の人生もクローネンバーグに支配されてきたような気がしてるんですけれど、彼をあの役に起用した経緯と、その後、クローネンバーグ映画とのどういうふうに出会ったかっていうのをちょっとお聞きしたいんですが。
I mean, we are massive Cronenberg fans, and I think the thought of working with him never even crossed our minds. It was an idea that was floated by our casting director that we instantly jumped on and said, "Oh my God, yes, please, let's explore that if that's possible." And honestly, it took, I don't know, 2 or 3 days, and he said, "Yeah, I'm in, let's go. This will be fun." And so we were just pitching ourselves because, I mean, if you've seen our movies, you can tell we're giant fans of his. And I think it's one of those rare instances of our fandom and our careers kind of colliding in a way that, being on set with him, there's a reverence for him from ourselves, from the cast, from the crew, that you could just feel every day that we were working with him. And he was so disarming, so nice, so open to being in the movie. He was there to play the role, and our intention or our worries of like, how do we direct David Cronenberg? he just immediately put them to bed and was like, I'm here to just do whatever you guys need, whatever's best for the movie. And, made it so enjoyable and was also very open to just kind of like chatting with anyone who wanted to chat with him about things. And it was lovely. It was a really special experience that I think we'll remember for the rest of our lives.
ですね、こんまあ、僕は実はですね、まあ、ラベイヤンと言ってほしいんですけども、ラベイヤンサタニストなんですね。で、まあ、チャーチオブサタンに所属してるんですけども、なので、まあ、この映画に全く楽しくニコニコ見ておりまして、全く反論するようなことはないです。で、中で出てくる呪文やなんかっていうのは非常に馴染み深いものばかりで、あ、知ってるっていう、楽しいところがあったんですけども、しかし今回ですね、主人公の名前が前回グレースだったんですけど、妹の名前がフェイスという。で、グレースとフェイスっていうのが2つ続くと、これ非常にキリスト教色が強くなったように感じられるんですよね。で、まあ、その金持ちや権力者をサタニストとして描いて、で、そういう人たちが爆発するとかいうと、例えば、まあ、デビルズ・レインという昔、マキールという映画がありましたけども、まあ、そういう枠としてはすごくわかりやすいし、全く僕も問題してるわけではないんですけども、一方で今、例えば Q アノン以来ですね、実際にそれを事実だと信じる層が増えているということも、まあ、あります。で、それについてはどういうふうにお考えですか？
He himself is a Laverian. So he
ラベ、
believes in
ラベアン・セイタニスト。
Oh,
Satanists. So he,
一作目よりも、一作目のがキリスト教書が強くなっている名前のせいでっていうことと、それから、その Q アノンなどの界隈で、金持ちをだから、金持ちや権力者が悪魔と通じていて、それを悪役として描くっていうことは全くエンターテインメントとしてありだと思うんですけども、一方でそれを事実だと思ってしまう人が最近増えていることについてどう思われるかということを聞きたいです。
it's a really good question. I think that you know, the fact that this movie is releasing during a time when we have like the world's first trillionaire, I think it's not accidental that the satire that we're trying to present is very much of the moment. I think that it's hard to read the news and not feel like the world is being controlled by the ultra rich, and that the divide between the ultra rich and everybody else is just getting wider. And so I think that that was always that's a very evergreen message, right? We're not the first people to tell a story about that. I think that our goal is always to take something that has real meaning and significance and really is serious, right? We consider that to be a grave cultural and like humanitarian problem, but make a movie that can explore all of the ideas around that in a way that isn't just about that, right? And I think for us, adding the layer of religious mythology is a way of removing that concept just enough from front and center so that we can then have a little bit more fun with it, right? We can add an element of fantasy horror to it. And then I think the other layer of that is to really just find great characters to put in the center of that mythology and really tell a relatable, grounded, emotional story first, and have all of that stuff exist as a backdrop to their story. And I think that was certainly the focus on the first movie, and we knew that also had to be the focus for this sequel.
まあ、だから、まあ、ちょっとだけ逆に言うと、本当に、僕が見てて思ったのは、本当にね、ミスター・ルベールが実在して、実際の金持ちも、金持ちっていうか、悪の金持ちですね、もう爆発すればいいのになと思って、そういうところがこの映画の魅力だと思いました。
Exactly.
Yeah, if that's real, yeah,
Yeah.
偶然とはいえ、一つの家の中に閉じ込められた人たちが脱出しようとして争う話ですよね。で、今回もというか、このシリーズ、レディオノットも、やはり同じように、その館から抜け出そう、あるいは閉ざされた館から抜け出そうとする話で、と戦う話っていう ものなんですけれども、で、割とそういう、それはもちろん、予算の都合とか、その映画の作り方として、そういうのが面白い、うまく作りやすいということはあるとは思うんですけれど、それ以上に、こういうのをやろうっていうことはあったんですかね。
Yeah, I think, I think it comes, there's probably a lot of reasons that that exists, but I think the one that's true for us and for the writers and Guy Busick, who wrote with Ryan Murphy, wrote Ready or Not, and with Stephen Shields wrote Abigail. I think there's something that we're attracted to in the idea of trapping characters in an enclosed space. Even our old stuff from years ago, it's a common theme that kind of finds its way into our work of take people out of the real world and the comforts they're used to, put them in an enclosed space, and then figure out how to deal with that. And I think I don't know what itch we're scratching in our psychology, but there's something to that we keep going back to it. And I think, on a storytelling level, it's just a fun way to kind of enclose the story and make it force the story to be all about the characters and what they're doing within each other or, to each other within the moment to moment of it. I even think back to some old Twilight Zones where it's like everybody, in a basement when they think the world is ending outside. And those were some of my favorite episodes. It's like there's just something about the immediacy of humanity and how it's dealt with in an enclosed space and with a timeline, like a ticking clock. But yeah, there's something, one of the things we always say is that we don't set out to make a movie to tell people how to feel about a thing or what we feel. It's a process of discovery. And I think one of the things that's so enjoyable about making movies is that we get to kind of discover what the movie is saying to us, about us, and what we're trying to say in the process. And I think it's something that helps keep that alive. But you're really spot on. It is a thing we keep going back to time and time again. So there's something there, something inside. I don't know if we were trapped. We were kids.
It's a feature, I think, of the genre, going back. I mean, I think since the beginning of the genre,
this whole Dark House, Christie,
and then The Thing, like again, the idea of humanity under pressure in a enclosed space, like it doesn't get any better than that in terms of just drama.
前作が95分、今回も108分、ちょっと長くなってますけど、この物語もスケールが大きくなり、要素も増えにしては、随分タイトだなって思うんですよ。こちらとしてはもっと見てたい気持ちもあるんですけど、この映画の長さっていうことについて、何か考え方とかポリシーみたいなものっていうのはあるんですか
？Nothing, I wouldn't say any specific policy other than, we like to make movies that don't have an off-ramp. We say all the time that you want to feel like the movie grabs you early on and just pulls you forward, that it's ahead of you the entire time. And I think that, because of the condensed timeline of the first Ready or Not and the second Ready or Not, it becomes really, it's much easier to make a movie that has a short timeline because of that ticking clock, right? And it's about, the whole movie is building to sunrise and the consequence of what happens at that specific moment. And I think for us, it's then just fun to find ways to put the audience very squarely in Grace and Faith in this movie, in their point of view and on the ride with them moment to moment. And I think if you let too much air into the story, you start asking questions that we just don't want you to ask, right? Like we want you to be in the feeling of survival, terror, fear, catharsis, and that those things are all mixing one after the other until the conclusion. And I think that's just, those are the kind of movies that we love to watch. The movies that we grew up on, they just didn't have any fat, right? They were very specific in their point of view, and so I mean it's we try to do it with everything that we do. Like, how can we, even movies that feel like they want to have a bigger, longer timeline, we are always trying to compress them because it forces us as filmmakers to make choices that are very specific and in the moment. And hopefully it forces the characters to be on a journey that is also just very much about them learning as they go and in the moment. And, the audience is just right on the journey with them the whole time.
今回、一作目でラブメテンダー使われてまして、今回、ボニー・タイラーの、トータル・エクリプス・オブ・ザ・ハートという曲が中で流れるんですね。で、映画で音楽使うときっていうのは、その曲は他の映画で使われてたりとか、どっちの前にあった印象が強かったり、それを書き換えたりってことがよく起きると思うんですけども、ボニー・タイラーの曲に関しては、ラッセル・マルケが手掛けたですね、ミュージックビデオがとてつもない、とんでもないインパクトのあるもので、僕も大好きなんですけども、それは、ボニー・タイラーの曲を使うときに、考えられましたか？その影響を受けるっていうか、これ、どうしてもその曲とイメージがすごい結びついている曲だっていうことに関して、ちょっとためらったりすることがなかったでしょうかということなんですけど。
No, that was a fun little thing that was in the back of our heads. We were aware of it. We grew up with the song. The way that song made it into the movie is kind of a funny story. On the first movie, we had actually used that in a scene where Grace is in the car with the butler and the radio's on, and it just didn't feel right. It felt kind of fun, but it felt like it was reaching outside of the tone of the movie. And so we had originally used and ended up using 1812 Overture there. But in the back of our heads, there was just something that was like, God, for some reason, Total Eclipse of the Heart just it does. Let's hold on to it. And so when we were doing this movie, we were designing that scene, and it had originally been in a different location, and then it got moved during pre-production. We were like, oh, it should be in the ballroom where the wedding is, and it's everything's tightening and coming together. And once we put it in the room where the wedding was, it was the idea of, oh, there's a DJ booth, right? Oh, that's the tone we're going
the
for.
first dance song.
Let's use the song. And the first song we thought of was honestly mostly for fun. We were like, we should try Total Eclipse of the Heart, see how that feels. And we did, and it just felt right. And because there's a darkness to that song, and there's also a hope. And I think, this movie has those two things, right? There's a lot of hope in this movie, and there's a lot of darkness. And it just felt so right. And we tried couple dozen other songs, 100 other songs, I don't even remember, but none of them had the kind of like magic special sauce that we needed. And we ended up with it and love the way it played, because you feel the fun, and then you feel the earnestness of it. And I think that for us, that's what we're going for in the whole movie. And so it kind of encapsulated the tone just perfectly for us.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.